Tika.
Yeah. So, how many Hindi words you have
Not
picked
very
up?
many.
But you know Tika.
I know Tika. I know Aap Kaise Hain, which
Aap Kaise Hain?
I ask my my assistant every morning.
Yeah.
And Bahut Acha.
Bahut Acha.
Yeah. Just very few.
Yeah. It's my pleasure to interview Dr. Rand Harrington, the director of American Embassy School. He's been in India for almost 7 or 8 months. You moved here last July, right?
Yeah, so it's a year and a half.
Year and a half. Yeah. That's good. How's been your experience so far?
It's been fantastic. Yep. We love India. I love the school.
Yep. So Dr. Rand brings him with an exceptionally rich academic and leadership journey from physics laboratories to classrooms and from American schools to the foothills of the Himalayas. I was reading a little bit about you, and I came to know that you have done your Ph.D. in physics at Washington University, correct me if I'm wrong?
Yeah.
University of Washington. And then you were also doing maybe some teachings for the Buddhist monks.
Yeah.
Tell us about this, because I found this really, fascinating. How did you, from US and
Yeah, well, there was a curriculum I was working on called Physics by Inquiry for elementary school teachers, and I'd authored some of that. And the Dalai Lama had decided, he was doing the Mind Life conferences and decided that the monks needed to know a little bit more basic Western science to be able to engage with.
So it was the idea of the Dalai Lama.
Came from the Dalai Lama.
Okay.
And so he decided to interject some basic Western science into the monastic education of these monks. And he sent Angkor Rinpoche, one of his, he was the head librarian, archivist.
What was his name?
Dharamsala, Angkor Rinpoche.
Okay.
And so he came to the U.S. and looked around, and they needed something that was basic, but intellectually high level.
Yeah.
And so they discovered this curriculum, Physics by Inquiry, and I had a friend that went, and I ran into him. He goes, "Rand, you have to go. They're using your materials." And so I got invited to go back, and we did 3 weeks where we worked with. There were some Cornell professors and UC Berkeley professors that were doing. We did math. They did math for part of the morning, and then they did
in Dharamsala.
In Dharamsala, yeah. And TCV, Tibetan Children's Village Schools.
Wow. So for how long you stayed there?
Just 3 weeks.
3 weeks.
Yeah.
Bad.
3 weeks. It was an incredible experience, as you can imagine.
You're still in touch with some of that?
What's that?
That's the photos from there, right?
Yeah.
That's so cool.
I have a friend who's actually the personal physician of the Dalai Lama, so I go see him. And many of the monks that we worked with are now. There's one that is head of TCV school.
And how many years was it?
This is a number of years ago. It was like 15 years ago.
So it's not your first time here in India?
That's right. I've been here a number of times.
And maybe that kind of motivated you also to make your decision when you were coming here?
It did. Yeah, my wife was an international Rotary governor, so she came to India to do service work. And she had come a number of times. And we both fell in love with India, fell in love with the people of India. And so when this opportunity came up, it seemed pretty natural for us to aspire to be here, and here we are.
Yeah. Now let's talk about the education, because that's kind of your forte. What does the future of education really look like, if I ask you?
Well, I think we're at an interesting junction. Something that's going to hopefully, I think, motivate us as educators to do something really more compelling and more interesting than we have been doing. There's a lot of things. If you think about education, there's learning and there's doing, and the assumption is if you do stuff you're going to learn, but that's not necessarily true. And a lot of stuff that we do in schools, AI can actually do better.
True.
Right? And doing doesn't mean you're learning anything. Mm-hmm. And the difference is that when you're doing stuff and not learning, it means you're not really engaged. So learning requires a deeper engagement, and AI can't really do that. And we also know that that people learn to a large extent because of their relationships with the instructor. Mm-hmm. And
the personal touch, the human connection.
There's an emotional piece to it that's really, really important. There's a lot of lessons to be learned from sort of past attempts. I know Stanford was involved in what they call the MOOCs, right? Massive online courses. They had at one point, I think, 160,000 people taking one class, right? Mm-hmm. And it was a failure. It was a pretty intense failure, right? Or dramatic failure. And I got to go to Stanford to talk to the people that had developed those courses. And the provost at the time told us, he said, yeah, it really failed. The success rate was about 5 to 10%.
It's good for marketing,
yeah.
But
they almost all dropped out. And he said to us, there's a group of educators, he said, we did some research to figure out why that happened.
And why?
We
What
all
was the
sort of
reason?
leaned in, what was the research? And he said, well, it turns out that the relationship between the student and the teacher is important. And it's like, yeah, I could have told you that. It is very important. And so this is what we do at our schools. It's so compelling. And so to replace that with an intelligent tutor, AI tutorial, maybe you can supplement some things, but that relationship, that human relationship, and the ability to help kids not just learn content, but learn how to adapt and form relationships and understand people from different countries and from different backgrounds, turns out to be incredibly important. And you can't short-circuit that with just focusing on the mind and development of the mind. There's a lot more that goes on with that. So I think schools will either learn, right, that they have a huge part to play, and when we think about the future of humanity, and how educators and how schools then react to the current sort of disruption around AI, I think will determine, really, I think it will determine the future of humanity. I feel it's very urgent, and we have to think about this. We have to get it right, and replacing schools with AI would be the wrong thing to do. I always tell teachers, if we can replace you with AI, we probably should. That means you're not doing anything that's really added value. And so I'm looking, we have teachers here that understand kids well, understand how to develop that sort of emotional connection, and help them to do what some people call transcendent learning. It's where you learn something at one level, but then you transfer it into sort of an understanding of deeper ideas. And for kids to really be able to add value to the world, they need to be able to do that. And you don't get that from AI.
So that's why we need humans. That's why we need tutors. I think it's one of the ancient ways. I mean, it's kind of traditional way. I mean, that's how humans have been for thousands of years, I would say, right? Even in India, there used to be gurukuls, where
That's right.
Yeah.
But it has to do with you learn only the things you care about. Yeah. And caring is an emotion, right? So emotion and cognition are sort of connected. And so how do we teach in ways that kids actually care and you feel purposeful? That's really important.
Also, you have just joined AES almost a year ago, right?
Yeah.
And after 8 impactful years as head of Kent Denver School in Colorado, right? And what attracted you to the American Embassy School, and what made you, what motivated you to move to India right after completing your...
Yeah, we talked about that a little bit, right? Our connections to the country of India. The school, AES, has a really long, wonderful reputation as being one of the top international schools in the world. And it was a tremendous opportunity for me to come here, truly an honor, and sort of a sacred trust for me to help sort of support the school and their existing sort of their purpose and the things that they're doing. They've always had a commitment to community and bringing people from, we have 70 different countries at the school. And so people think, well,
from 70 countries.
Yeah, so you think, well, it's an American Embassy School, they're all Americans.
No.
And that's not the case. It's only about a third, less than a third are Americans.
It's a true cosmopolitan place.
Yeah, so you have all these different countries. So if you're teaching a history class, you come into that classroom and you have all these kids from all these different countries with different lived experiences and different countries of origin, different backgrounds. And that means that the conversations that you have, the quality of the conversations are just amazing. And we call these kids third culture kids, right? Because they're growing up in cultures that aren't their own. And so they're really learning how to be in the world.
But what are the challenges for these kind of kids with their education? I'm sure they must be having their own challenges.
Yeah, so some of the challenges are that they move every few years, right? Yeah. So they're always sort of transitioning from one school to another. That can be seen as a challenge. It can also be seen as a great strength, that kids that are able to do that, they're able to drop into a new culture and sort of learn to understand that culture, develop what we call cultural competency, to be able to navigate different kinds of friendships with kids from different countries. Is a huge strength for them later on in life. I find these kids amazing. I love these kids. And
you interact with them often?
As much as I can. I spend too much time in this office, but every time I get out, I try to walk around and I try to join the kids in the classroom. And the conversations that they're having are so compelling and interesting. They're really wonderful kids. So that's a large reason why I'm here. It's the kids, it's the community, and the teachers are amazing here. And so I'm learning a lot from the kids, I'm learning a lot from the teachers, and enjoying every minute of it.
Sounds impressive. And you earned your PhD in physics from the University of Washington, as we were just discussing about it, which is no small achievement. So do you feel that a background in science changes the way you approach problem solving, decision making, and leadership in a school environment, especially while dealing with your children, with this students?
I'm sure it does.
Yeah.
The answer is yes. I think,
and how?
When you study physics, or even any of the sciences, you become more of what you might call a systems thinker, right? You think about how things work as a whole.
Critical.
Yeah, and so when you're looking at schools, if something's not working, and there's a problem or friction or things aren't functioning correctly, my first inclination is to think about how we design the system, and can we design a system so people can thrive? And sometimes people don't thrive because the system's broken, right? It doesn't allow them to do their best work. And so I see my role in this job is to figure out how we can create a structure, an institutional structure that supports teachers and families in a way that everyone can be successful. And so I think that systems thinking can help. By my nature, I'm a curious person, and science was always something that I loved because it was really a way of seeing the world and to answer questions I had about the world, right? Being curious. And I think any educator, number one, you want someone who's curious, and instead of coming up against issues or problems and first being sort of judgmental about what is the cause of this and jumping to conclusions, it always helps to pause, to be curious, and to do what you might call in science an investigation, right? So sort of how can we look through the layers and understand exactly what's going on? What are the root causes? And that comes from, I think, some of my scientific background.
So that does help you while dealing
dealing with
your daily work, I would say.
Yeah. Let's look at the root causes.
What do you think about the modern education system, especially? Let's talk about the American education system. I was doing a little bit research about it, and I came to know that it was kind of deeply influenced by the Prussian education system, which was started in 1800s after
you have done your research.
when they got defeated by Napoleon, so they decided to make a kind of a uniform and the same thing. So what do you think that? Do we still are we supposed to follow the same thing, or is it room for some changes? What do you think about it?
Well, that's a really important question you're asking, and a big question. There are these, what they call the canon, the 5 core subjects, math, English, or social studies, science, and so forth.
Yeah.
And they were established, and like you said, the rigorous type of curriculum was established so that every kid would be able to essentially follow directions.
Yeah, there was a reason for it, without questioning, without.
You got to go work in the factory, and you need good employees that are compliant. So a lot of it is based on compliance and based on sort of basic training. And so you're absolutely right, we've outlived that. And I think the teaching methods continue to evolve and change, but the core structure of schools haven't, not since, really around 1900. And every time we introduce a new technology, people say, this is going to be disruptive, we're going to change everything.
Same thing they used to talk about computer when it's going to...
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The laser disc, the TV, or
even
computer,
mobile phone.
All these things are going to be disruptive to the school, and we'll have to rethink things. None of those have changed anything, right? If you look now at the school today and you look at a school 100 years ago, you'd recognize it. There's a classroom, there's chairs, there's kids in there, and there's a teacher, and that structure hasn't changed for a very long time. This recent disruption with AI might change that.
How so?
It could force us to completely rethink. I think part of it is going to be the job displacement, right? So one of the things that schools have to do is we have to look a little bit into the future and help prepare kids for this sort of unknown future. If we're preparing kids for jobs that aren't going to be there anymore, we're not really doing what we should be doing.
Maybe.
And what we're seeing now is the job displacement is real. I think there are a lot of jobs that are going to be going away, displaced. And so the question has to be asked, well, what are the jobs? What is the added value of a human being? How can human beings work in partnerships with machines in a way that add value? And those kind of skills will be different. And so schools have to react to that. And so we're going to need to modify and re-examine what we're thinking, what we're teaching, how we're teaching, so that when kids leave here, they won't be replaced by a machine. They'll have an added value that is unique to being human, and that's the conversations we're having now.
Like even talking about the AI, as you just mentioned, that I mean, I think it was Sweden or Denmark. They just recently banned AI for their small children, right?
Yeah.
And they were kind of the pioneers for the AI, and they almost kind of practiced for 10 or 15 years, and now finally they came to a conclusion that it's maybe not that beneficial for the children as they used to think 10 or 20 years ago. So do you, according to you, what should be let's say the minimum age for a child to have the exposure of
Well,
AI?
Australia, they banned TikTok for all the kids, right? Under 18.
Exactly.
No social media.
Yeah, let's first talk about AI and then tell me about for the social media. What should be the minimum according to you, and as a parent also?
Yeah, I don't know if there's an answer to that. I mean, you can ban whatever app you want, or ban kids will figure out
They'll
a way
use
around it or
VPN. They will
something
use
else.
something.
They'll use something else. So teaching kids how to think and providing kids with a lot of activities and experiences that take them away from their phones, right? If you're going to ban phones and ban AI and then sit your kid in the room by himself all day, that's not going to work. Instead of banning phones, get your kids outside, right? Go do sports, right? You can't run down the pitch with a phone in your hand, right? And so the kids that are doing sports don't have social media in their hands. I think kids that are active and doing project-based learning, for example, even in schools, you pull the kids away from their social media. And
spend time with nature, maybe go for take them for trips.
But you're right about 10, 15 years ago, educators couldn't put technology in the classroom fast enough. Now we can't get it out of the classroom fast enough, right? We're trying to pull the screens out.
So what's the right balance?
It depends. It's a complicated question, right? It depends on the grade level. Depends on what you're trying to teach, and it depends on how you're using that technology. We're finding that there are uses of technology, for example, creating content, right? Where kids are using tools to create content. That's really a different use of technology than sort of the stimulus response programs that kids have, which is similar to the social media, how they get kids sort of addicted to these things, right? You have a stimulus, you respond to it, and the computer responds. And it's very engaging, but it takes a human being out of it. And we know that especially young children relates to human beings really different than they relate to screens.
It also kills your creativity when you're just you have the answer of everything using.
Yeah, it's right. It's right there. There's a lot of research now showing that.
And the writing skills, I believe, that's something that's going to be affected the most.
Yeah.
Because
you're exactly right. The research on this is becoming very clear. There's a cognitive decline with increased use of AI. Because they're using it as an intelligent substitute, right? They're doing the thinking for them. It used to be when you assigned a writing assignment, you were teaching critical thinking because you had to be
there was a certain order that you have to follow.
But if you outsource that to a computer, the kind of thinking required to use AI to write an essay is quite different than writing it from scratch. And so, again, going back to the doing and learning, you can do stuff, you can write essays, but that doesn't mean kids are learning. And so how we use those programs and the kinds of assignments that we give have to change. We could give an assignment 10 years ago and be pretty confident when kids did it, they were going to learn something. Now we can give the exact same assignment.
They're doing 5 minutes. And most of the kids might have the same kind of answer because they all are using the same tool. There could be few, but as a teacher, you'll just figure out in 5 minutes that, if it's...
But if the goal is to engage kids and to challenge them and make sure they develop their minds and think, then we have to do something different. And that's what's exciting about being in education right now.
I just added that about Australia, as you said, the ban TikTok and all. But what do you think? What should be an ideal age for a child to have the access of the social media? There must be something, right?
I don't know the answer. I think it's very contextual. I really do. I think it has to do with the kid, it has to do with the family and the context of where they're living and what the kids are doing, what activities they're doing. I think we're finding certainly in if you want an age, right? I would say elementary school is not appropriate, right? And so middle school is sort of a transition there, right? There's some things that they can have access to and be okay, but again, it's how it's used more than what it is, and all the other things you're doing with your child, right? It's not just relying on technology; it's replacing technology with something else. And what are you going to replace it with, right? You can ban this, but what are you going to do instead? That's the most
physical
important
activity
question.
and like things like the
Absolutely.
And you spent almost 3 weeks with the monks in Dharamsala.
Yeah.
So how was were they also addicted with social media or phone?
No social media, no phones.
Did you learn something while and there's something that you learned from from them that you also try to kind of use with your students?
Well, I think that it was really, we talk about with teachers, we talk about wait time in the classroom, right? Because so often if you observe a teacher, they'll ask a question.
Yeah.
And wait for, and the kids are thinking about, and the teacher's not patient enough, right?
Yeah, there's always one kid who's quick.
Yeah, or the teacher says, all right, nobody has a question, we're going to move on. And so working with the monks, we worked through a translator.
Okay.
So I would ask a question.
And then?
The translator would then translate it to the monks. The monks would think about it. Then they would reply to the translator, and the translator would translate it back to me. So there was a built-in wait time.
So
it was very deliberate
should be
teaching.
a pause.
Yeah, it was just a long pause.
Yeah.
And I thought, wow, that's going to really disrupt the classroom, sort of narrative and the rhythm of things. And instead, it was the most beautiful teaching ever. It was just this wonderful classroom where I had so much time to think about, well, what's my next question that I want to ask? Or, where are we taking this conversation? What's the next idea? How are we going to develop this concept? It was really wonderful in that respect. I learned that, we did a lot on whiteboards, right? So they could draw, making your thinking visible by drawing is really helpful. It transcends language. And
the vision, the image.
Yeah. And so they could draw what they were thinking about things. And I remember, I'll just share one story, right, where we were sitting there and I heard this slap, right? And I thought, I think he hit him.
Yeah.
The monk hit that guy. And they're like, no, Rand, he didn't hit him. It's part of the traditional sort of didactic arguments that the monks have in their traditional religious studies. And they took me to a monastery to show me this, right? When they do debates. There's books written about monk debates. And one monk would sit on the ground, the other would argue their religious point. And then when they're making their final point, they point their hand right at their nose and they go like this. And they started doing this in my class, right? They're like, no, this is how it is, right? And it was wonderful.
To get
they
that
were
attention.
very, very excited, very engaged in the ideas, and very passionate and full of emotion. So it was really wonderful to see how deeply they engaged with the ideas, and of course how focused they are, right?
That's true. That's something that we all can learn from the monks, especially in not even just in education, no matter where.
If you misspeak, just one thing, they would catch it.
Yeah. Impressive. Yeah. I have to spend so much time with them. Cool. So now, I want to ask you this question, for all of our listeners and viewers, especially to the young generation, what are according to you, what are the 3 advantages and disadvantages of the AI?
Of AI?
Yeah. Because you have been pretty much.
Well, we talked about the disadvantages, right? The disadvantages is where you use it as a substitute for thinking, right? And your own thinking, and of course the other disadvantages have to be, at least right now I think they're improving the models, but AI has a really hard time saying it doesn't know, and so it ends up making up stuff.
Yeah, so they'll find something from
there's still hallucinations. It still makes up references, and so you have to continue to challenge what it's giving you. You can't just accept what it is on face value. Because it's making things up. You have to recognize also that AI is mimicking, right? It's a reflection of humans. It doesn't have its own values, right?
It's not something that he's having a critical thinking.
Yeah.
He's just giving you what's been there on the web.
It looks like critical thinking, but it's not, right? It's mimicking things, and so it's after people start sending me stuff, sometimes even parents, AI generated, or a teacher sends me an email, it's AI generated. I can recognize it quickly. Right?
Even parents do it.
They say that, parents do it. They say,
what's your first reaction?
I get disappointed, because it's like, I don't want to read something generated by AI. Right? It feels soulless. Like, I don't know.
Make mistakes, but it should be done by you.
Yeah, I want to know what you think and not what the machine thinks. So that's disappointing. And I see why people do it. They're trying to save time, and they're trying to check their grammar,
accurate, and
so forth and so on. But so that's disappointing. So you have to recognize again that there are very much limits to it. That's the disadvantages. The advantages are, I mean, if you think about it, if you're a learner, like you're just a curious person, right? Then there's never been a better time to be alive than right now.
Okay.
If you want to learn something, you can learn it.
That's the
right?
best.
I used to have to go to my dad's encyclopedia and look up, chapter 4. Now, if there's anything in the world that I want to learn, I can learn at any level I want.
True.
So the access to knowledge, if you're critical about what you're reading, is really at a high level, and that's pretty exciting.
Yeah. True.
I do think there are also advantages. I use it for data analysis, right? There are times when you've got a lot of data, maybe a lot of spreadsheets, or you've even done a constituency survey. I've surveyed parents, right, and they have open response questions. To read all the open response and then try to take away the patterns takes a lot of time, right? AI can help me to read those and then give me a summary, and I can look at trends and so forth.
For the data purpose.
Yeah, so the data analysis is very helpful. I think it's very, very useful.
It saves a lot of time.
Yeah, it saves some time. So I'm hoping what it does is it saves us from some of the menial tasks that we do. The real question is, what are we going to do with that saved time? Right? Are we just going to entertain ourselves on social media? We're going to do something useful, right? And as long as we use the extra time to do something useful and interesting, then I think humanity will be better off. The two possibilities here is AI is going to usher in the demise of humans, or it's going to usher in an era of human flourishing. Whether it goes, which direction it goes, I think has a lot to do with educators and what we do in schools and how we teach kids. That's my belief.
True. Yeah. And also, if I ask you, what are the top 3 books or 5 books, let's say, if you would like to, you have to recommend to the, let's say, students who are 14 plus or 15 plus, maybe they're the college students, what would it be? And for same for the kids.
I should have prepared. You didn't put that on the list. I need to think about it. Anyway, there's so many interesting
just 2 or 3 books you have to recommend.
You're talking about for kids.
For all of them, let's say from the child of 4, 5 to 20 or 25, what would it be?
5 to 25.
Yeah, for the young minds, basically.
Wow. Well,
anyways, our brain is still not fully developed till 24, 25 this year, right?
Yeah. That's a great question, and I have to think about it. There's so many different books.
Pause.
My favorite book has always been...
Do you have it here?
I don't... Yeah, I do have it here.
Which one?
It's called Mount Analog by René Damal. It's the green one there, the thin one.
This one?
Yes. Yeah. This has been one of my favorite books in life.
What is it about?
René Damal was a French philosopher.
Okay.
And so he writes... this was the last book he wrote. It actually ends mid-sentence because he dies before he finishes it.
What?
Which is very interesting that he does this. But it's a metaphor
I would like
about
to read
finding a mountain, right? Climbing a mountain. There's a lot of symbolism in it. He was a philosopher, so I was a climber too. So the analogy to mountain climbing and life, it brings it all together for me. And I think he's a wonderful writer. It has always been really intriguing. People ask me. I ask the same question to people sometimes. When I interview teachers, I ask, what's the book that you would give to someone that says something about you, what you care about, and I always give that book. Yeah.
It's called
Mount Analog.
René Damal. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, please. This is the book.
Yeah, I'm looking at my bookshelf because I have other books up there that.
What's the next one? That's the first, and then
that I love, and that I give to kids occasionally. There's a wonderful series, and that is called. I'm trying to think of the exact title.
Pause and think like the monks.
The Adventures of. Was written by George Gamow. The Adventures of Mr. Tompkins. So
the Adventures of
Mr. Tompkins.
Mr. Tompkins. Okay.
So Mr. Tompkins. So George Gamow was a physicist, right?
Yeah.
And he wrote what looks like a child's book, right? In which he imagines that, and there's this. The star of the book is this professor, Mr. Tompkins. He falls asleep, right? And he has these dreams, but in the dream, the speed of light is much slower, and the quantum numbers are much bigger, and so his bike there's time dilation.
That's written by scientists.
Yeah, written by scientists. So you get to understand sort of the principles of special relativity and how gravity works through seeing what the world would have been like if some of these numbers were different. And it's a wonderful little adventurous book that opens up your mind. It's really quite, the imagination is amazing.
Do you have that one here as well?
I don't have that one because I think I gave it away to a science kid. I said, "Hey, read this." It's really quite fascinating.
It's fun to give your favorite book to
Oh,
somebody.
it is.
Exactly.
It is. I'm looking up there at some of these other books that I love. Many of these are for I would say for an older audience.
Let's recommend something for the older audience as well. What would be?
Yeah, there's this book. It's funny because I got this book recommendation from watching somebody else being interviewed that was asked the same question, and he said a couple of business books. He was a businessman or something, and then the last thing he pauses and goes, "Well, there's one more book," and he says, "But I wouldn't recommend this to everybody."
Okay.
Right? Most people shouldn't read this book, but for this book, for him, it completely changed how he saw the world. It's called Atmamun.
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 Have you read it?
I have several times. It's sort of a Himalayan guru kind of a book about essentially what some of the modern psychologists are telling us, like Dan Siegel and some others, that our mind can sometimes be our worst enemy, right?
That's true.
The stories that we tell ourselves, and how do we tap into the thing that is us that's not our mind, right? And recognizing that all the thoughts that come up aren't necessarily us, right? And sometimes I think we get carried away with believing what our mind is telling us, and sometimes it's helpful to step away from our mind and to look from a different perspective. And that's what Atmamun's about. I think it's a very interesting book. It's a little bit controversial in how he writes it, but it's very provocative. And I like books that challenge you.
Exactly.
Yes,
That's what it's supposed to be. It's not supposed to please the...
That's right.
Yeah.
So Atmamun is one of those books that had a profound impact on me.
If I ask you, I know that for a fact that you read a lot of books, but on an average, how many books per month you read or year? You can,
I started carrying a Kindle, right? Because you're traveling.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
You have a lot of books, one of my challenges is I have too many books going at once. Right? you start this book, and then you get distracted. You start another book,
but it's a good option, I believe.
I have to finish them. Right, I have to sit down. There's a couple I'm in the midst of that I need to finish now. There's a wonderful book that I'm just finishing called Genesis. It's the last book that Henry Kissinger wrote before he died. It's about AI, and he was writing about it because Henry Kissinger was involved in really thinking about nuclear weapons and the threat to humanity. And he saw in the last parts of his life that it was as big or larger a threat to humanity than nuclear weapons. And so that's a big sort of interesting book. So, but yeah, I always have 3 or 4 going at a time.
And if you have to recommend, let's say students for the younger generation, how many books, according to you, on an average, they should read at least? Because nowadays I feel like, it's reducing every year.
Kids are not reading books too much anymore.
Or some of them almost to none.
Yeah. And so they should always have a book. You should always have a book going, and I don't know how long it takes. There's not like a time limit as you got to finish a book every 2 weeks or every month.
But at least one book.
But have a book going all the time, that's compelling and interesting. And as soon as you finish, find another book. I would never go through life not having a book that I'm reading, like something that I'm currently looking at every day, or at least every other day, or getting to that I.
And it also changes your mind, how you see the world, how you.
Yeah. So I'm always looking for book recommendations from people, and it's and I talk to students all the time about the importance of reading. We can't lose that. It's such a window into ideas, and it's so important that we continue to do that. And this is maybe the damage that social media is doing, is it's reduced our attention spans and a hard time focusing for a long period of time.
Because there's so many things.
They want to be stimulated with dopamine hits all the time, and so you get the dopamine hit, and then you get onto something else, and you get bored easily.
That's why the social media was created for. Exactly.
It's training our minds to do something that's not helpful, though.
True.
So we have to fight that as much as we can, and reading is one of the ways.
I think the role of parents also it's very crucial for bringing that awareness to their children.
Yes, the effect is having. I think that self-awareness is what's perhaps the most important skill. Maybe the hardest thing is to know ourselves, and so how do we figure out how to manage our minds. Going back to
Manage our
Atman,
minds.
how do we become self-aware of how we are in the world? Those are important ideas.
Yep. And now I want to ask you again a very important question that kids today these days, especially in the digital world, they grow up online often faster than they should. And do you feel that social media is pushing children to mature too early, emotionally and mentally as well?
Oh, absolutely. There's no question.
And what are
That's
the
case.
consequences, like the negative consequences?
I mean, if you think about it, I feel like an old man when I say in the old days, right? It was your reading level that determined the level of complexity of ideas that you were introduced to, right? Adult topics were more difficult in terms of reading levels. So you start with as a child, right, with early reading levels, and the concepts in the books you had access to were more basic, and they had morals to the story. You sort of started to learn and develop your moral compass, right? There was sort of a layering that happened year after year. Nowadays, with social media and movies or podcasts or YouTube, every kid can
TikTok.
be connected and exposed to any idea that's out there, right? And some of those ideas are very, and images, right, can be very damaging. And so this is definitely a challenge for parents. I'm glad my kids are older now. I can't imagine parenting in this day and age. It's very, very difficult. But kids are exposed to all these things. And I think the most important thing for parents is to know what their kids are looking at and have conversations, right? You're not going to prevent them from seeing things, but make sure that those things they're seeing are contextualized and they have an opportunity to talk about them and put some context into them, and to again, those family values are important.
So again, that's also but sometimes even for parents it's very challenging, I believe, right?
Unbelievably challenging. Yeah.
Do you get these kind of complaints from your parents at times that?
All the time.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard. It's hard to be parents, and I think sometimes we catastrophize a little too much. We want to over control, and that's not necessarily the best solution either. But the relationships we have with our kids, and you also have to let your kids. There's a fine line here, because you want to let your kids also explore and take chances and risks and own and become responsible on their own. You don't want to make decisions for them all the time. And I used to give parents this analogy that raising a kid is like putting a big puzzle together, right? And the edge of that puzzle are your family values and safety, right? That's what you're in charge of as a parent. Hit the edges of that puzzle, make sure they're there. The middle of the puzzle, that's like friendships and homework. Stay out of the middle of the puzzle. Let your kids do that, right? Don't try to overmanage the middle of that puzzle. Your job is to manage the edge. And I think that's a nice analogy in terms of understanding that balance between being supportive but not being enabling, right?
Yeah.
That's a tough one.
No, easy. And if you have to recommend, something, any tip for the parents, what would it be?
Well, probably just that, what I just shared, right? Just stay out of the middle of the puzzle,
but it's just
have that edge firm.
But it's just a lot of things. Now let's talk about the teachers as well, because again, nothing could be achieved without their support. And also for you, according to you, what are some of the biggest challenges for teachers these days, inside the classroom and outside as well?
Well, it used to be that we would say that teachers had, sort of the day shift, and the parents had the night shift, right? And there was a separation of home and school. Because of social media and phones and so forth, that boundaries have been blurred. So things that are happening at home impact school, and things that happen at school impact home. It used to be that, a bully would write a note and put it in your locker. Now the bully is on your phone harassing you at night, right? so there's no separation here.
True.
And so that makes it incredibly difficult for teachers as well, right? Is to understand that their student, I should say, their child, lives in this pretty complex ecosystem with a lot of different pressures, right, and influences, and so for them to teach well, they need to understand that child, what motivates them, what their strengths are, and how to play on those strengths. And so that sort of personalized teaching is the highest level of teaching, and it's complicated. Right? There's a lot of other things going on.
So teachers have more pressure these days.
I think there are. I mean, I think given the complexity of things, sometimes it's easy to blame one factor, right? And you say, well, my kid's acting out at home, I'm going to blame the teacher, right? And the teacher's like, my kid's acting out in school, I'm going to blame the parent, right? So, wait, no, there's a partnership here. We don't need to blame anyone. There's a lot of things going on. And so I think you have to teach whatever kid walks into your classroom and learn how to serve their needs. But it's, teaching is a wonderful, wonderful profession, and it's incredibly complicated. It requires high level of expertise in the content area, as well as high level of expertise in pedagogy, like how to approach things. And then also you have to be a professional psychologist and understand the minds of a child and their developmental stages and where they are.
You must have been also very fascinated with psychology, I believe, because
absolutely.
Okay, if I ask you, if you have to deal with a child who is not a very good listener, who's maybe you can also call it disobedient, maybe that's how would you be handling that situation?
Well,
because it could be helpful
there's a lot to that question, right? Because when you say they're not listening or they're being disobedient, you're describing on some level, it could be describing a kid that has ADHD, for example, right? And it's not that they're not listening, their brains are working in a different way.
The root cause.
So what we understand now about something people usually call neurodiversity, right, is that every mind thinks a little bit differently. And a child with ADHD, if you look at some of the most successful CEOs in the world right now, guess what? They have ADHD, right? Because they also have a superpower, right? So it's figuring out for your child that feels like they're not listening and they're distracted all the time or doing other things. You have to figure out what their strength is, right? Focus on their deficit. Focus on the strength. What's their superpower? For another example, kids that have dyslexia, right? It used to be, wow, you're going to put them in a room, make them read because they're lousy readers, right? And that's really one of the worst things you can do because then you're just focused on the thing that they're
lacking
frustrates, right? The lack. What we do know about kids with dyslexia is they have super heightened powers of spatial reasoning.
Really? That's
absolutely
cool.
Almost, I would say 3/4 of my colleagues in graduate school in physics had dyslexia. Because in physics, you have to use your mind's eye to
3/4.
Yeah, be able to see things in space and rotate them. And I know there are tech companies that do gaming and three-dimensional work. So they always want to hire someone with dyslexia because they're much better at that.
Wow.
And so I think understanding, again, kids are different. What's their strength? Right, that's what a parent needs to do.
And every different kid must be having...
Every kid is different, right?
Must be having his own or her superpower.
So a kid that's not listening is not an oral reasoner, right? They're not taking in information through their ears in a way and processing in a way that makes sense to them. So they just block it out. But what are they taking in, right? What are they good at, and how to engage them in the things that they're good at. I think again, a strength-based approach is always a better approach in my point of view.
And I think that's kind of very where parents lack, because they always try to focus so much on the
thing deficit.
Yeah, exactly.
The thing they're not good at, we're going to make you do it.
Especially with Indian parents, they are even more. I don't know if you have observed this or not, but India, have you ever tried to because I believe you also before coming to India, you were teaching you were the director also at Colorado, and then before that also you also with the university you've been teaching in the teaching field for so long. So what's one of the major differences that you see when your journey in India, in Delhi, and in US?
Well, I was the head of the science department at a school in San Jose. It was 70% Indian.
Where in
because
US?
They're all technology people.
Like the South Indians, many of us.
So I've been involved in working with Indian parents for a long time. So it's not a surprise.
So do tell us a little bit about the Indian, how they're too competitive.
It's in the end, right? Parents care deeply, right? They care about their kids.
Sometimes it's too much.
Yeah, sometimes it's too much, but they really want their kid to be successful. What they don't realize sometimes is that it puts a lot of kids actually. Parents don't believe this all the time, but kids actually want to please their parents. They really do. They don't want to disappoint their parents, and so it puts on an awful lot of pressure. And what it does is it makes it communicates to your child that the love you have for your child is conditional. It's based on whether or not you got an A. Did you get on the varsity team? Did you achieve? And when you pick up your child from school, the first thing you ask is, did you get an A on your math class? The kid's like, well, what if I said I didn't? Are you not going to love me
But
anymore?
that's also a cultural thing at getting, because
Yeah.
yesterday I was having the same conversation with this Brazilian lady.
Yeah.
She was like, in Brazil,
Yeah.
if I always used to come last in the class, and my parents didn't they were still chill, but I was good with arts. When I went to college,
yeah.
I was.
Yeah, so you found their strength. She found her strength, and her parents allowed her
But
to
that's
do
a
that.
cultural thing also, right? Sometimes it's.
Absolutely. And you can still push for high achievement. Just don't forget to tell your kids you love them every once in a while, so that they understand that it's not conditional. But the perfectionist, some kids develop this disease I call perfectionism, right? Where they don't want to ever make any mistakes, and they don't know how to fail and learn from.
But then
from
also
challenge.
kind of is a negative sides to this as well.
Oh, they become very fragile, right? And any kid, we get, it's going back to AI. If you use AI in a traditional classroom, what happens is it's seen as cheating, right? And plagiarism, and you'll see a lot of acts of what people would call cheating from kids that are perfectionists because they're trying to perform at a high level to please their parents. And they ran out of time, they couldn't get it done, so there's pressure, they've got to get it done, and they want to please their parents. So that perfectionism makes it very difficult to then also, when you leave the home, to navigate a world that's not perfect, and you will find challenges, you will fail, and you really want to develop kids that are resilient and don't have this level of fragility from being overprotected.
So yeah, we should be protective, but exactly the balance is very important.
It's always a balance.
Yeah. Now, coming to one of the very interesting topics, like about the bullying, especially the cyberbullying.
Yes.
So it's no longer earlier it used to be just the school campus, maybe a few decades back, but now it follows children even at their home through screens.
Yeah.
So how serious is cyberbullying today, and what warning signs should parents and schools watch for? Because you have been into this,
Yeah, this is a very dark topic.
And I feel like maybe it's more common in US compared. What do you feel like?
I think it is more common in the U.S.
Yeah.
One of the things about the kids here is that the kids that are in this school are primarily expat kids and kids from diplomatic families. They're under close supervision all the time. If it's not their parent, it's a driver or a housekeeper or somebody, right? And so you don't have as many what we call latchkey kids that go home after school into an empty house, right? And they're unsupervised. I think that the topic of cyberbullying is a very dark one because it's getting worse.
Do you think it's getting worse?
Well, the tools are more sophisticated for bullying, right?
Yeah.
And deep fakes, AI images, the sexting that was happening, where there was a photo of a nude kid that was then passed on, and the kid gets shamed, and then it increases sort of we've seen suicide rates go up. Kids can use AI to make it look like a nude photo.
Even though it's all fake, but
it's all fake. It's all fake.
They could pick maybe one photo from.
Devastating to a 13-year-old girl, for example, in middle school, to have a photo like that around. And so the tools for bullying are pretty sophisticated and can do a lot of damage quickly. Stuff on the internet, as you know, is never private and never goes away.
Yeah, it's always there.
You have this digital footprint.
Yeah.
And that can be devastating for a kid. And so we have to be very proactive in the families and at school, in our education about how we train kids.
The lawmakers.
Yeah, they need to get on board with it.
Yeah.
There needs to be a lot more controls and regulation around this, and the technology companies need to take more responsibility. The damage is real, and it's serious, and I know it scares educators and it scares parents, right? Because it's there, you have to. Even though kids, we talk about privacy and so forth, this is your child. You want to make sure if they have access to things, you have access to the same things, and that you know what your child's looking at and what they have. You need to protect your child from those things. And at the same time, you need to give them a sense of independence and responsibility. So there's a tension there, right? There's a tension there, but particularly for young children, we need to be very diligent.
Especially with adolescents, that's even more crucial. Yeah.
There's a lot of bad stuff out there, and so you need to protect your children from this. So again, there's an easy way to stop it. You put your phone down. or don't buy your kid a phone. Right?
Especially
I'm a big proponent of going back to flip phones. Right? They don't need a computer in their hands.
Do you have something like in school that phones are not allowed in the classroom?
That's right.
Like it needs to be put in the locker?
Yeah, in the high school, they have to leave them outside their classroom. A lot of the teachers have a sleeve that they put their phone in.
Yeah.
Middle school, no phones at all.
That's great, because if you need something, directly call the teacher.
Yeah.
That's always an option.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because
I believe in some schools, like still they don't have like very strict rules when it comes to the phones.
And it's limited because you take their phones away, they go into the classroom, what's the first thing they do? They open their laptop. A laptop is like a phone.
Yeah,
like you can text, you can message, you can do all the things on a laptop you can do with a phone. We have stricter controls on our laptops, right? In terms of filtering and making sure that kids are accessing things that aren't doing a lot of damage. But in some ways, somebody said, well, it's sort of like the tech companies are like the tobacco companies, right? There's financial incentive to sell this stuff.
Yeah.
It's not quite like tobacco because nicotine and smoking is just bad, right? There's no good side to it. Technology is more like food, junk food and good food. You need to eat, but you want to eat good food, right? And so you want to get rid of the food that's doing damage and causing cancer and
Yeah, but sometimes again when you go to the supermarket for food, you will just see the sugar content poster.
That's right. That's all the apps.
Exactly. 85% of the whatever you call that, the stuff, it's filled with the sugar stuff.
90% of what's on the App Store and the Apple Store is junk food. Right? And so we have to learn to be intelligent consumers of food and intelligent consumers of our technology.
Yeah. I'm sure that many of our listeners would be benefited from this. Now, let's talk about your experience in India. It's been a while since you arrived in India. Have you been your first impression so far? Especially about India.
As someone told me the other day, if you love India, India loves you back. I feel like India is a Rorschach drawing, right? It brings out who you are.
I think the same thing I was watching maybe once documentary saying that if you come with whatever your lens you come with, you will find the same thing in India.
Right. If all you want to see is trash and poverty, that's what you're going to see.
Exactly.
Right? But the rich culture, the religions, the history,
the
festivals, every day there's a festival, is just wonderful and enriching, and I really love it. It brings me a lot of energy as I learn. Today there's something going on, and I have to ask somebody, all right, what's happening today? Which God? Wonderful thing about India, for sure, is what brought us back here, and it's the people. People are so warm and friendly and interesting and engaging.
Curious.
Curious, yeah.
That's true.
Really curious. Indians are curious people. Is that it just warms my heart every time we go out and we meet somebody, and they're so warm and kind and so forth. So I think that's India's strength, is its people, for sure.
And what are the things we could improve at?
Well, trash collection would be number one.
I agree with you.
And number two would be air quality.
And third would be, I'd put maybe the honking.
Honking. Yeah, there's a lot of honking. Yeah, traffic is a little crazy.
Yeah, these three things would be if we are able to work on these three things, I personally feel it could be really
Yeah, I don't mind the honking so much, but air quality,
the quality.
They need to get serious about cleaning the air in Delhi.
That's something especially.
It's a big deal, and
it's become a health crisis. In fact.
Yeah, I think it definitely is a health crisis, and it's the thing that gives, when we go to recruit teachers to come to AES, it's probably the number one thing that gives people pause. Do I really want to come to Delhi? Because we recruit in the winter season, especially when the air is the worst.
Exactly.
It's on the front page of the paper all
the
world.
Newspaper, all the news channels, all over the world.
So I'm hoping that, this is my plea to the Indian government, let's clean up the air.
Please do work on this. Even the director of American embassies is requesting. And it's something we have to work and improve on. But you have traveled also pretty much in many places in India. I've watched some of your Insta stories.
We just got back from Saringa. My wife was just down in Udaipur. When we first got here...
any favorite, something that you loved a lot? Maybe the beach or the forest or something, any place that you enjoy a lot?
Well, I have a deep love for the mountains. So going north, Dharamsala, and up to the mountains is always feels like
I just forgot, you are a hiker also, right?
Yeah, I used to be a climber.
You used to be a climber.
Yeah. And so I've been to the Himalayas climbing a number of times.
Tell us about a bit, what peaks you have covered.
I did a new route in the 80s on Mount Amadablam.
In the 80s?
Yeah. It's been a while. There's a picture in the back,
Please take that photo,
The summit of Amadablam.
That one also,
Climb Pumori, which is right next to it.
You with your friends?
Yeah, it's my friends. Down below, There were three of us that climbed this mountain together. One is Martin Zavaleta. He was the first Spaniard to climb Everest. He was a...
Did you climb Everest also?
No, I didn't climb Everest with him. Human on the left, Human Apron, he's Iranian. And he had also climbed Everest. So there's an Iranian, an American, and a Spaniard climbing Ahmad Ablam together. International expedition of sorts, a small group.
Do you still go for like the hiking and all? And for the climbing,
I still hike when I can. I'm getting old, but my kids get me out. And,
super young you are. you should definitely try like, Gangotri and Yangotri. That's pretty great for hiking. The origin of river Ganges.
Yeah.
The top. And there's an amazing hike. It's called Gomukh. It's basically the source from where the river Ganga starts.
My dream is this summer. I'm starting to plan it in June. Is to walk around Mount Kailash.
Mount Kailash. That's going to be in the June. I think it's going to be super amazing.
Yeah, because the Chinese are letting people back in.
Yeah.
It's the home of Shiva. Yeah. And to walk around it,
that would be so amazing.
Is what I want to do.
Do you know about that? There was this a Russian scientist, maybe a few decades back, who was doing his research about the Mount Kailash, and he also published, I think, books and all related to it. And according to him, if you stay at Mount Kailash for a certain period of time, you for example, your age starts to kind of maybe
reverse?
You start to grow, and your nails, for example, and all. According to
I'll test that.
You should
hypothesis.
maybe exactly. You could read that. You could read that book.
Yeah.
It's pretty inspiring. Now let's come to the rapid fire round.
Okay.
So let's end with a quick rapid fire round, and I'll just ask you some random stuff. So you have to pick one without thinking too much.
Oh, I can't do that,
After staying with Monk, physics or philosophy?
They're the same.
You think so?
Oh, yeah. Let's search for truth.
Yeah. And classroom teaching or school leadership?
They're also the same.
But I would
a great classroom teacher is a great leader. A great leader has to be a great classroom teacher.
Were you ever a classroom teacher as well?
Oh, yeah, many years. I taught physics.
In the university?
At the university, I was a physics professor, and then I taught physics in the school level.
What's more challenging, at the university level or the school level?
Oh, university is harder because the kids are less engaged. You have to work harder. The kids are easier in the high school. They're much more engaging.
Mountains or cities?
Mountains, that's easy.
Books or documentaries?
Books. Documentaries can sometimes be tunnels, and books are windows.
What's for you? What's more crucial? I think books.
Books, yeah.
And then documentaries.
Because they're a window into the world. Documentaries can be a little bit narrow.
And then maybe the social media stuff.
That
comes there. One word to describe the future of education.
That's a tough question. You said one word to describe.
Or sentence.
Yeah, I think the one feeling I would. Not necessarily a word, but a feeling I have about the future of education, as I shared before, is urgent. And if you substitute the word humanity where it says education, you're talking about the future of humanity. That's why it's urgent. The future of education is the future of humanity. So we need to think about this.
And one word about India.
Colorful and brilliant. It's a wonderful place to be.
Where are you from, by the way, in US?
I moved around a little bit, mostly West Coast.
So you're from West Coast?
California, Washington.
Where were you born?
I was born in California.
California.
Lived in Washington a lot. Worked in Wyoming, and then taught at the University of Maine, and then ended up in Minnesota. So I've been in both coasts and in the middle of the country. My wife's from Wisconsin, so there's a big Midwest. We own a house up there. So
that's interesting. Is there something about US that you miss here when you're here in India, or anywhere else in the world?
I used to. I'm missing it less these days.
What?
I think that when I'm in Delhi, what I miss most about the U.S. is it's easier, at least where we were living, to get out into nature.
Yeah,
right?
True.
Clean air, and being in nature is really important to me, and it's harder right now in Delhi to have those experiences. That's what I miss.
And that's something even I miss. I'm from India, but that's true. Thanks, Dr. Rand Harrington, for this wonderful conversation. And thank you so much for sharing your wonderful insight about education. And we talked about pretty much so many topics. And I believe that our listeners are going to enjoy this conversation. Is there any final word that you'd like to say to our viewers and listeners?
just gratitude. Thank you for allowing me into your country to be here. Thank you for following up and having this conversation and the fact that you care. I'm humbled by that.
It means a lot.
Beautiful place to be.
Yep, it means a lot. Thanks a lot.